طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على رسول النبي الأمين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين وبعد. I wish to commence by mentioning two ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which should set the tone for the discussion and which would serve as a motivation for our presence here today. The first is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned سيأتي على الناس زمان لا يبقى في الإسلام إلا اسمه ولا يبقى في القرآن إلا رسمه. That a time will come before the end of time when there will be nothing left of Islam except the name Islam, and then there will be nothing left of Quran except the wordings of the Quran. So a time will come when there will be nothing left of Islam besides the name of Islam and nothing left of Quran except the wordings of the Quran. So in terms of the wordings of Islam and the name of Islam, is there absolutely no flavor, no meaning to what a person is involved in. They'll be doing it as a ritual. Qurbani comes and Qurbani goes. A person is not really feeling the essence of Qurbani, and this talks to us about the aspect which we will discuss a bit further, but later inshallah, is the aspect of doing an EFT and sending the Qurbani away. Then all the Qurbani illa ismu except a name. So it's just changing the reference to Qurbani and doing an EFT. So that is the one motivation, that we shouldn't let that become prevalent in our lives and the lives of our children. The second is that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, وَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ, that when you slaughter, then slaughter well. Do it well. Number one, have your mindset well. Number two, find the right animal. Number three, to eat in the correct way. All of that is فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ, to eat in a good way. So that now serves as a motivation for us for today's discussion, to understand the concept of Qurbani, of Udhiyah. Let's first go on to some virtues of Qurbani. The first is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that there's reward for every hair on the animal. And Sahabi asked, Ya Rasulullah, what about an animal with wool? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, with every fiber of wool on that hair on that animal, a person gets a reward for that as well. Another, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that the animal that is slaughtered for Qurbani will serve as a mount for a person on the day of Qiyamah over the Sirat, entering into the gardens of paradise. So this is a great virtue. Another virtue that is mentioned is that this aspect of Qurbani wasn't a practice in the previous nations. It's something exclusive to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we say Sunnata Abikum Ibrahim, then this is the Sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but no other nation practice on it. Only we as the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are practicing on the Sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To understand the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam arranged for the sheep. He slaughtered the animal, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam engaged himself in the entire practice. So being part of the whole flavor, the whole culture of Qurbani is all part of the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to go on to the rulings related to who Qurbani is compulsory upon, it is compulsory upon a person who is a Muslim, who is mature, who is sane, who is sound-minded, and who is a resident. So a person is at home and he's a Muslim, he's baligh, he has we look at the aspect of the wealth, then it is compulsory upon that person, right? So a child is not compulsory upon a child when a child is not yet baligh, even if the child does have the money, right? It's not compulsory upon a child, upon an insane person, upon a person who is a traveler, right? So a person who is a traveler, it's not compulsory upon that person. But obviously now let's not forget that the days of Eid are 3 days. So if a person is traveling for that entire duration, then yes, he may be excused. But again, our whole objective, what we talk about, is to maintain the culture. We don't just look for finding loopholes. When does it become compulsory? When a person gets the nisab amount, he's a resident and he reaches the stage of puberty. So if a person does not have the wealth, then he doesn't have to discharge, he doesn't have to slaughter an animal for Qurbani. When we talk about the concept of nisab, the same as when we discuss in zakat, so the nisab is sitting at about just under 10,000 rand. If a person has that amount of money on the day of Eid, then yes, he needs to slaughter an animal. So it doesn't work like zakat, that he has to for the entire year. So on the day, minus his payments that he needs to make on the day, then he has to do his he has to give do the Qurbani. Let's look at an example. A person, Eid falls on the 25th, and a man receives his salary of 10,000 rand, but his rental is still 6,000 rand, and his groceries that he requires on that day is another 2,000 rand. So that on that person it's not required, right? Qurbani is not compulsory upon the husband on behalf of his wife. So the wife independent, right? The husband independent and the wife independent. They say that what is hers, what is yours is hers. Right? But this is another discussion, right? So it's so if the wife doesn't have the amount of nisab, then it's not compulsory upon her, and the husband doesn't have. Even if the husband has the money, he does for himself, and he doesn't have to do it for the wife. If the wife has, then yes, the husband can do it on behalf of his wife. It will obviously be permissible because gifts are good. Inshallah, this is just for the ladies who are listening that I am encouraging gifts. Right, and then a person who has the amount of nisab but he has debts. So like the example we mentioned, a person has to pay off his rental, he has other payments to be made. All of that you deduct from the amount of money that he has. It is also recommended that we make Qurbani on behalf of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam slaughtered animals and he made the intention that this is for my ummah, as well as deceased members of the ummah, our family members. It is a beautiful thing for us to for us to do Qurbani on behalf of our family members, of our deceased parents. Mentioned, I read something interesting some time ago, where this man was busy doing some of his calculations, and his accountant is there with him, and he's asking, okay, but now you're putting aside for your mother, okay, and your father, but your mother's alive, right? Your father's deceased. What money are you putting aside? He says, my father still has a right on me. I'm still, this money here, I would have maybe spent it on him. I'm spending it on his behalf now. So this is something that we need to have a set amount. Also, Qurbani is an opportunity. In terms of the Shafi'i madhab, then it would be one Qurbani for a family. Alright? So obviously we're discussing the Hanafi madhab, so it is per individual. Just something as a clarification here is that when a person goes for Hajj, when we doing the Damu Shukr, that is different to Qurbani. So if a person is going for Hajj, then he does his Damu Shukr there. If he's doing a Tamattu or Qiran Hajj, then he does his Damu Shukr there, but he can do Qurbani here in South Africa, right? Because the Damu Shukr is done within the precincts of the Haram. Right. Qurbani is if it's not fulfilled when necessary. If the animal is purchased and not slaughtered, or the animal is, let's look at this, all these points, let's put it all on first. Right. So I think we can leave all of this out. This is a whole, if we didn't, inshallah, we can discuss it. Okay, the Qurbani animals. So a sheep needs to be 1 year of age. Right? A sheep needs to be 1 year of age. If the sheep is now 6 months old, but it resembles a 1 year old sheep. So you have 1 year old sheep that are here, and you have that one 6 month old sheep, and you wouldn't be able to see the difference. Then yes, you are able to slaughter it. So in today's time, we have some of these feedlot sheep. These feedlot sheep are sometimes 6 months, in fact, even younger than 6 months, and they could be bigger than many of the other sheep. You can get a 6-month-old feedlot lamb at a nice 50, 60, up to about 70 kilos. So and perhaps even more. So that would be permissible if it is younger than 1 year old, over 6 months or older. But if it is big enough, as it would fit in with a 1 year old sheep. So in terms of the meat, yes, the best is lamb in terms of the consumption. So that would be perfectly permissible if you want to, because one of the objectives of Qurbani is not just that of charity, but for us to actually engage in it. So for us to eat from that meat, so to slaughter an animal that we will eat from is actually very praised. And on this discussion also, we might get to it a bit later also, but here at this point here, just to mention before I forget, is that when we complain about the aspect of the food, the meat being very, I don't know how to describe it besides meaty. That's how we say it. It's smelling like meat, right? But from the butcher, it's not smelling like meat. It's because we haven't followed the process that the butchers are actually following. So perhaps that animal wasn't the best of animals. Maybe it was an old animal. Or number two, maybe we didn't store it in the correct manner. It wasn't skinned properly. It wasn't stored in the correct manner. It wasn't sliced correctly. So there we need the guidance of those who are in the industry. And so there's obviously a benefit in terms of going the formal route and maybe not doing it at home. I'm not discouraging at home, but I'm saying that if this is a concern that we're having, and if we do it at these established plants, then they follow the same route and the same process that they're using at the butchery, and so you're getting the same meat then. So it's actually the issue is actually with our process, and it's not the aspect that it is Qurbani meat. The second is in terms of a goat. A 1 year old goat is it needs to be under 1 year old. In terms of a goat, it wouldn't fall as the same ruling as a sheep. In terms of a cow or a buffalo, in terms of cattle, it needs to be 2 years old. It needs to be 2 years old. Now, just something that I recently learned about and I found interesting is that a grade steak is a 1 year old cow or 1 year old cattle. So what we buy from a butchery is we will rarely buy B grade steak or B grade beef. So this is also plays into the discussion of that this is why you maybe your beef that you bought from the butchery versus that which you did Qurbani may not be completely the same. So yeah, so that's just some a consideration that I thought I'll share with. In terms of a camel, it needs to be 5 years old, right? So yeah, camel is hot meat. So it's 5 years old, inshallah. Then if you eat from that, you'll also it has lots of heat in it. Right. Let's look at some preferences. In terms of one healthy sheep is better than slaughtering two weaker sheep. So instead of sending out many sheep, you do one healthy sheep. That would be better than two weaker sheep. In terms of a sheep or goat, is better than a share in a bigger animal if the meat is more. If the meat is more in cattle, then you may take that as well. A goat is generally better than a sheep. This was regarded in the books of fiqh, they mention about it. But again, we go back to our discussion that we look at where we will be able to benefit from as well. If we are eat lamb from a sheep, then that's what we should, would be better for us to slaughter. This, I know there is, when we talk about the goat being better than a sheep, some Pakistani brothers have give lots of importance to this. That they look for the biggest goat. And also it comes from the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where we mentioned in the start that the hair, so the bigger animal, the more hair. So I know they look for, and it can come at quite a large price, mashallah. But in many of those senses that, or those who I spoke to who do that, they don't personally eat from that meat. So they slaughter a sheep for themselves, but that goat, that meat they'll give away because it's quite tough. Such a big animal is an older animal. Okay. So far, for any discussions, any questions on this point here about the animal?
We eat it on the same day.
Okay, we're going to get to that now. In terms of the animal itself, yeah. So in terms of what animals do we slaughter, it's mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not anything of that family. It's not anything of that family. I know that question came to mind a few years ago when I went to Bolivia for Tarawih, South America, and I saw this llamas.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought that, okay, this is like between a camel and a sheep. So could we slaughter it? That's when I came across, okay, no, that you can't actually. It's whatever is mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. In terms of distribution, what is advised, but not compulsory, is that you distribute your meat in 3 parts. So one for yourself, one for family and friends, and the third for the needy. In terms of this qurbani again, is that we should be eating from the qurbani meat. I think it's mentioned regarding Maulana Muhammad Zakaria rahmatullah alayh, that he for the 3 days of Eid used to only eat the meat of qurbani. So it's not an aspect of compulsion, or it's an aspect of love. That this animal I slaughtered for the sake of Allah. The other animals it's halal inshallah. But I didn't slaughter it. I didn't take the name of Allah. I didn't read so many du'as. I didn't say, oh Allah, that this is for you. So this meat is special. That's why I'm eating from this meat. And obviously the barakat, the blessings from that meat is also special. So to eat from the animal as your first meal is a mustahab. So on the day of Eid, it's not a fast that we're observing. It's not a fast. So, but it is mustahab for us to eat. The first thing we eat on the day is the meat. Right? And in terms of what part, and that it could be any part, but just an encouragement for everybody is that we shouldn't be very fussy in terms of food. That if that liver is served, take a small piece from it, inshallah. Put lemon on it, and it's very nice. The kaleji. Right. In terms of what's permissible, we can keep it all. Permissible to keep it all. We can let others eat from it. You can have a walima, invite family, perfectly permissible. We can use the skin as well. There's no problem in that. You can give the skin away as well. Where it becomes an issue is to sell the skin or to use it as a compensation. Right? So it's not permissible to sell it. Right? Or unless you give in the money away, as you may have on the slides, right? But it wouldn't be correct for us to sell the meat, to sell the skin. So here sometimes we could make a mistake of paying a laborer with that skin. This would be incorrect as well. But giving it to the person is no problem. As an extra after we have already paid the agreed amount. So it's not permissible to sell the meat or the skin. It's or we can't give it as payment to the skinners, to the laborers. Right. When should the slaughtering take place? The slaughtering should be after Salatul Eid until the Maghrib of the 12th. According to the Shafi'i madhab, until the Maghrib of the 13th. Right? So, just an aspect regarding this in Surah Hujurat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuqaddimu bayna yaday Allahi wa rasulihi wattaqullah. Don't go ahead of Allah and Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Mufassirun explained that when this verse was revealed, is that on the day of Eid, one Sahabi was very excited. So after Fajr, he called his animal and he slaughtered the animal. Then later, at Eid Salah, now Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is informed, the Sahabi did this ayah was revealed. They don't go ahead of Allah and Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Don't be overexcited. It's after Eid Salah, that is when your Qurbani animal should be slaughtered. An etiquette, important aspect is to be out of the sight of other animals. This is something that I've personally seen, how the amount of anxiousness that it creates within animals when they do see the blood and they see the other carcasses of other animals. Not to sharpen the knife in front of the animal, that we do when we are about to torture somebody. You place the animal on its side facing the Qibla, right? Its side facing the Qibla. We make our intention that I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, as a means of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following the sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and to slaughter with no more than 3 strokes. Right? So now the way we slaughter is essential, right? We need to make sure that firstly all of that, if you're slaughtering like a sheep, that all of that wool is pushed away when we're slaughtering, right? And you put force at the top, right? At the top when you're slaughtering. So we don't keep it at the front of the neck, because if you're going to start at the front of the neck, what you're going to do is you're going to be sawing through, and sawing through then is painful to the animal. So you do it on the side, and you put force in. A few years ago there was a video clip circulating of Maulana Aniskara. And mashallah, was 1 stroke. He was putting the knife out. Done, complete, slaughtered. So that is something that we at maximum of 3 strokes. Right. In terms of this here, something interesting is that I've read in a paper some time ago that suggested that there's absolutely no pain that the animal goes through during the slaughter process. Now, to understand this, if a person gets hurt, then the message is sent to his brain, and that's when he feels pain. The pain is not felt when he got hit. The pain is felt because the brain said you got pain. That's what pain is. So, if the slaughter takes place, if there's immediate cutting, no sawing, there's immediate cutting, before that message could go to the brain, that animal is already dead. So there's no pain. There's absolutely no pain that animal went through. Whereas when I was in Bolivia in South America, there it was they had 2 cattle in the slaughter box type of a thing, and they hit them with hammers. Now what happens is you break it brain dead, and they slaughtered it much later. They actually, while skinning, they cut it. So otherwise there was no slaughter process, and this is, we say Alhamdulillah for the gift of Iman in Islam. Right, we cut the 4 pipes: the food pipe, the air pipe, the 2 outer jugular veins. That's what we slaughter, right? And we don't cut the whole neck off. So this applies to the etiquette in terms of all animals. We don't cut the entire neck off. The next is this here. This is an important thing which sometimes happens, is to cut the marrow. So once you slaughter, there's a white piece there that at times you'll find people stabbing it. So they'll say that no, the animal is not dead as yet until I stab it, because what happens is still there's some kicking. But when you're doing that, that's connected to the spinal cord, and that's now creating tension in the entire body, because the body is still warm. Everything is still functioning inside. Like we say, it's not going to the brain still, but everything is still functioning inside. And when you do that, you actually it's mentioned in the books of fiqh as being makruh to do that. So we shouldn't do that. It's natural for the animal to kick a bit. We let it kick. Then you let the carcass cool off. When we say cool off, it's cool off naturally. We don't take water and start cooling or putting on the neck. This is actually, again, it's not beneficial for to that animal, and it's not beneficial to the meat that we're going to be eating as well. So you shouldn't be manually cooling it off. Let it cool off on its own. So sheep for about 6 minutes, cattle for about 8 minutes. Okay. So these are some discussions. Now the next aspect that I wish to mention is that in terms of being present and being part of our Qurbani. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned to Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha that you should witness your Qurbani being slaughtered. So it's permissible for a lady to even slaughter the animal. It's permissible for a lady to slaughter the animal, and more so for men, we should be there, we should be part of that culture. So if for whatever reason we are maybe sending some Qurbanis away, we feel that there's such difficult situations in other parts of the world or other parts of the country, we may do so. But what we try to keep that culture amongst us as well, where we slaughter the animals, we do at least one animal that we slaughter with our family. So it's permissible for a male to do it, it's permissible for a female to do it. What's Sheikh Sami saying? It's late. Okay. What's important also is that it is a sunnah, it is recommended, it is good for our ladies to slaughter, but it is impermissible for her arms to be shown. It is impermissible for there to be a very carefree environment around there. So we need to be very careful about that. That whilst we're doing a sunnah, whilst we doing something to come close to Allah, we shouldn't be doing multiple other wrongs. So at times it happens that there's such a culture of festivity and a culture of freedom around when slaughtering that animal, that just that even that lady slaughtering and that another man is okay holding the neck of the sheep right by her. It's just not. These are things that we need to be careful about. Also, when it comes to, like I heard a clip of an alim talking about recently, in terms of the slaughtering of cattle. That yes, it's a wonderful thing. We all want to take our children to slaughter, but there needs to be a level of decorum. There needs to be that concept of hijab. All needs to be upheld in that situation as well. In terms of also here, in terms of the videoing, and that especially if it's a woman slaughtering, these are things that you need to be careful about. What other discussions are there? In terms of which animal did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam slaughter? There's a hadith that talks about a ram that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam slaughtered, which it looked with fil sawad, and it ate with fil sawad. It walked fil sawad. So it had a black around the eyes, black around the mouth, and black at the feet. So that was one of the rams that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam slaughtered. So if you can find that, then great. If that's your love for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can find that, then great. But it's not something compulsory. And like I say, that eating from the meat is also from the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basing it on our culture, we just want to slaughter an animal that you will eat from it as well. Okay.
Does it have to be gender specific?
In terms of the animals, generally for meat, you slaughter, or at least in terms of cattle, right? You're going to slaughter females because your males are more expensive. They're not meant for meat. They're meant for breeding, right? So you're going to slaughter. In terms of sheep, a castrated male is actually tastes better than a non-castrated. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam even slaughtered a castrated sheep. Right, another discussion when you mentioned castrated, and that brings me to the discussion about the tail. So in terms of the tail, the traditional accepted fatwa of the muftis is before I mention the fatwa, let me mention the ruling. That if any faculty or any part of that animal, if 1/3 or more is defected, then that animal is not suitable for Qurban. Right? So if it is blind, or if one eye is blind, or if 1/3 of the ear is cut off, that's a defected animal. So we try to do the most perfect animal. So that now takes us to the discussion of the tail. So the traditional fatwa was that if the tail is cut off, then it's not permissible, because it's a part of the animal that is cut off, so it's not permissible to slaughter. Other muftis have mentioned that no, this is not actually a defect. A cut off ear is a defect, but a tail that is cut off is not a defect. So because it's actually cut off for health reasons, like it's like an animal is castrated and it benefits the health of that animal. So likewise, if when the tail is cut off, it's actually of benefit to that animal. So it's to lessen the chances of diseases and things all breeding at the tail. So there the muftis mentioned. So some muftis mentioned that it's fine to slaughter an animal with a tail cut off. There's a difference of opinion amongst the muftis. I know I remember in Ali mentioning this, that Mufti Mahmud rahimahullah and Mufti Kifayatullah was also in Darul Deoband. Mufti Mahmud rahimahullah and Mufti Kifayatullah were together in the Darul Ifta, in the fatwa office of Darul Ulum Deoband, and somebody came to ask Mufti Mahmud the ruling regarding this. So his fatwa was that it's not permissible. So he said it's not permissible, and this person is still discussing with him. So he said, okay, if you're not happy with my fatwa, there's Mufti Kifayatullah, go take his fatwa. Mufti Kifayatullah's fatwa. So it's not something that's such a big discussion. There's a difference of opinion amongst the muftis. Mufti Radaul Haq gives permission for it. I know other muftis who don't give permission for it. So the best is, in terms of if you are able to get a animal which alhamdulillah it's freely available in our South African market, then we try to get an animal with a long tail. But if it is difficult, or if somebody else is slaughtering with a short tail, we don't have to make an issue about that. Any other discussions?
Castration is the kapata. It's called kapata.
Right.
Is it permissible initially to stop the breeding, initially to do the castration, to take the testicles out? So what is the rulings for Sharia?
To castrate an animal.
For that animal, like you should do the castration.
It's permissible. It's permissible. Yeah.
But a lot of saying that is not. Some of the people listening, they said breeding stop is not permitted. Is not. You're harming the animal and you're stopping the breeding. The male animal.
I don't know if there's any further discussions about it, but from what I've read, there wasn't any issue in terms of that. Maybe completely breaking off the process of reproduction could be an issue, but
if it is too much doing or something.
Perhaps. So even a castrating a horse would be permissible, because Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran that it was created for you to ride. So for you to take the full benefit of that animal, of being able to ride, perhaps castrating it will help, then it's permissible to do that.
Like sadaqah with the meat can only go to Muslims.
Sadaqah of not Qurbani. Qurbani meat you can give it to anybody.
Yeah, that's what
Qurbani meat you can give it to anybody. Anybody, Muslim, non-Muslim. If it's in our situations, it may even be, especially in our community, it may be very valuable to give neighbors some Qurbani meat, because they already know about the whole concept of Qurbani. So to give some meat will be good. Anything else, Mr. That I missed?
Just wanted to ask, you saying that in the morning, and that when some people is living on farms quite far, and they're doing some namazes late or something like that. Someone was mentioning sometimes about the masala. They said they can do the Qurbani even before going to the namaz.
If there's no Eid Salah in the entire area, so that means they're not going to be performing Eid Salah, then after sunrise. If there's no, like that means like not very rarely in a South African situation.
Maybe some were saying in other places.
Actually,
When
7.
we don't perform Eid Salah, they can do Qurbani.
If there isn't any Muslims in the area, that's what she's saying. There's no Muslims in the area at all. They're living.
You want to sleep and then you do the Salah and then you only do Qurbani. So you only get the ability to sleep later. Can't you just sleep a day before or maybe then myself.
So the situation that Dr. Sab is mentioning about is where a person has no Muslims in the area. He's living in a farm somewhere very far out. In term, another important ruling, right? So is in terms of cattle, we have 7 shares, right? Now, multiple people can come together and say, okay, that is our animal for Qurbani, right? What's very important there after that is in terms of the distribution of meat. The distribution of meat is, before I mention that, let me mention what's the issue that we could have. The concept of riba, we talk of interest. Riba is when you're selling the same commodity at unequal amounts. So if I give you a gold bangle for a gold ring, that could be riba, because what happens is the bangle is more gold than the ring, even though the ring may be more valuable because of the intricacies or whatever. So it could be more valuable, but in terms of gold value, we look here. This is now riba. This is an impermissible deal. So what you need to do is first purchase that gold ring and then sell the gold bangle. So we do it in some other way. So in terms of meat, swapping meat for meat is riba. If a person, if we don't do it in equal amounts. So what could happen is sometimes we say, okay, you know what, that fillet is more expensive. You take both, or you take the full leg, and I take the fillet. That's an example, a typical example of riba. There's a typical example of riba. We exchange meat for meat in unequal amounts. So there's something that we need to be careful about. If it's one family, it's very easy. That it's all given to the head of the house, or the head of that, whoever did the main person. It's all given now. You give it to us as you wish. Now, if you're doing that, if you're going to be saying that, like especially with family, we say, okay, no, you know what? You do whatever you want with the meat. We're giving it to you. Then now you can't complain that he got more than me, because you already gave it to him now. But yeah, from what I've personally, I've done a few cattle qurbanis recently, and I saw that the butchers are quite well equipped. So even that fillet, every piece they cut it in 7 equal shares. So they're quite good at that. But yeah, I thought just that ruling is an important aspect to know.
Are there
So
any,
also in terms of my my sheep carcass, which one is mine? The one you take mine, I'll take yours. I've swapped meat for meat. So if it's equal amount, fine, no problem. Mine is 45 kilos, so 45 kilos, fine, no problem.
Yeah, if incidental happen or something, that is different.
That is a fine.
Incidental, we do a lot of careful sometimes.
True.
well, I was just asking if there's any parts of the animal which were forbidden from eating.
There is. There's 5 parts, right? Is that? 7.
gold
I can't remember that.
the gold and that one.
There's about 7 pieces.
Those, for 70.
In terms of the stomach itself, you can eat. I've never eaten it, but I've heard people who said they ate it and they enjoyed it. What's it called?
You must eat part of the stomach. Otherwise, you could run in a fight.
You must eat, okay.
A small part.
Otherwise, it's not acceptable. Okay.
No, otherwise, you can get it, the same neglected or something. It does not be neglected. That's why we say it's
You're saying the Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Somebody who went to my brother a few years ago, when he went to Malawi, he was mentioning that they take the skin of the hide of the goat and they boil it. They boil it, and then after they remove all the hair and they eat that as well. I mean, that's obviously in that situations of poverty.
They even sometimes here also the cows, they burn slaughtering, they burn all the hair, and then they take the skin completely also.
To eat it as well. Okay, that's interesting. So it's all permissible to do that. Maybe just one ruling I just mentioned here as well is in terms of the hide of an animal. It's permissible as long as it's clean. It's permissible to use, irrespective of whether that animal was slaughtered in a permissible way or impermissible way. So your leather jacket, you don't have to see whether that animal was slaughtered in a correct way. It's permissible. It doesn't have to be. Yes, a jacket doesn't have to be sent out. Yeah. In
The big one, you have to be careful.
you have to be careful. Yes.
Sometimes they give 7 share on the cows. Some people do first thing. I was advising someone doing it here. They said 1 share, the 2 people giving the money is not allowed. 1 share you cannot share with the 2%. Then
The only situation I would see it could be acceptable is
the money.
say 2 people it's not wajib for them to do qurbani and they both have a desire.
Yeah. Then, but this is something that has been
There could be acceptability, but what's important there, it could be made on one person's name, intention on one person's name, but I'm supporting you. You got only 2,000 rand. I'll give you 1,000 rand, and I get the reward also. That could be done in that way. But otherwise, not 2 shares wouldn't be definitely qurbani for one. Or one person.
For the person.
In terms of a cow, any cattle, if you it should be all 7 should be that of qurbani. You should be that of qurbani. It could be certain some wajib qurbanis and some nafal qurbanis as well, but it all should be qurbani. It shouldn't be that we have 6 shares of qurbani, one is a sadaqah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. What is your question?
That 1 share, it is 7 share. Some like 5 share and 2 share, you should have Prophet's name.
What's qurbani intention? Yeah. In terms of our sending it out, you got a question also, no? What's the question? Ask the question. They say that whatever part of the animal you eat, that part becomes stronger of yours. So if you eat the eye, your eye will get stronger. The brain it tastes nice. We were in Madrasa Zakaria.
Nowadays, when they give the whole head because of all speak to the people.
It was Marasa Zakaria, I think it was the 10th of Muharram, so it was a fast. So for suhoor, they gave us eggs, and we were happy for the eggs. And later we found it was actually sheep brain. And that's when now we felt, oh no, but it tastes like eggs. It was fine. In the morning we didn't have any problem. It tastes like eggs. It's prepared like eggs, like scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
That's how it's prepared.
Would you have it again, man?
I won't make it. I won't order it. But if it's there, yeah. In terms of the Kalechi's lover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I look forward to.
You look forward.
I look forward to it. What's some lemon juice?
But on two occasions, I had very bad experiences. We tried to prepare it and taking advice from other people. And
Okay. So inshallah, after Qurbani, we'll now one evening inshallah we'll have Kalechi, inshallah. My wife will prepare. But the problem is you won't tell me that it's not nice or
This is small bit. Mulana, if one doesn't have the nisab now, then later on, then like in a month later, they get a job. Could they make that sort of a qada for that qurbani?
no, you don't make a qada. And if you do not do it within the days, and you had to, if you give sadaqah of that amount, right? There's no qada of it, right? So you can do it with the intention of as a tawbah.
One that always talking about this slaughtering, the jugular vein artery is the main important to cut. Always the goes in the middle some of the time.
So it's your jugular and at least two others, right?
Yeah, this
Or
both
three
sides.
others. Three.
The two mainly, jugular vein and jugular artery.
Yeah, so jugular and your two others,
Anatomically, the two
all the terms. But yeah, so it's your food pipe, your air pipe, and your two jugular veins.
Yeah, fine.
That's what it is, yeah.
Air pipe is trachea. So mostly they have to go through the artery because if it's artery, then it will quickly to go.
See.
Yeah. So, but sometimes
Are your arteries,
most of the people,
arteries are the small ones that are on the side.
no, big one, big
The
artery,
big one
because of
on the
supply
back.
to the brain. Yeah.
Okay.
There's two arteries very important. Anywhere, even in human also. But if you always telling them to not to hook to the spinal cord, still people do it. I don't know that should be.
So what you mentioned, Dr. Saab, I haven't come across people under slaughtering. I've seen people over slaughter. So that's why I didn't even delve too much on the discussion which pipes have to be cut, because I've never seen people under slaughter. But we've seen over slaughter gone too back and things. We always want to be careful also. So in terms of a child slaughtering, if the child is of understanding, it is permissible for the child to slaughter. Knife safety also on the day of Eid is very, very important.
And other things is water. They run water over the, as soon as they cut, they run water over the neck.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. That's not.
It's always telling, but they put in on water because the other people must prevent it. Whoever slaughtering the person there. If they should have tell the other guys, they don't listen. They don't actually know also that.
Somebody mentioned to me, and something new to this year is that it's against the adab, the etiquette, to clean your knife on the animal.
Yeah.
So that's your qurbani animal. Use water and clean your knife. Don't take it and wipe it on the wool to clean it up. It's against the adab. It's not something mentioned in Quran Hadith. It's from the adab.
Would it decrease the barakah to overthrow?
Just if you're doing it becomes makruh. Just like so, it could.
In the same way as slaughtering body 3 times, striking body 3 times.
Unnecessarily. So basically, I mean, if the job is not done after 3, yeah, it's then you have to do it. But otherwise, like I say, if it's, as long as the knife is positioned initially at the right spot, it's not going to take more than 3. If and so that's why it's important also. Whilst we do encourage that from a young age, children should be involved, it should be done in a way that it's not of harm to the animal. Because if the child doesn't have the strength, like I mean, these two guys don't have the strength. They can't push it hard enough. So it wouldn't be right for now to let the child slaughter them.
Because I've seen some of them, SPCA was there, and they're checking out the knives and everything. If there's some slaughter is not going, they shoot the egg.
Yes.
Because, because they saying the animal is suffering. They got all the points there. They come back and find some of the farm.
We need to be careful as well as in terms of cattle. Sometimes
Yeah.
with our latest systems, sometimes the cattle slaughter is becoming a bit less exciting. So we want to keep it exciting. But that's a torture to the animal. As long as we have systems, we follow. If we don't have the systems, yes, then the excitement is part of the package. But you didn't do it for the sake of the excitement. Stunning an animal for Qurbani is problematic. In a necessity, that's a different case that I think we have to see what the muftis have to say. Mufti Hussein is asking to give us a fatwa on that. But in a general case, basically, an animal that is stunned, its brain damaged, whether completely dead or whatever, but its brain damaged. So you're slaughtering a defective animal then.
So
On this point, let me just mention something that's also important, is that all of these adab etiquette of Qurbani, to implement it in our daily, on our normal slaughter is mustahab and is laudable. It's very important. It's great for us to do it, but it's not a compulsion. So sometimes we make the mistake of our normal meat that we eat. We say it needs to follow the Qurbani process. If we didn't follow the Qurbani process, this is not the ideal, but it's not impermissible. So the abattoirs, they're not following this facing Qibla or any of that. They even stunning the animal. So it's not ideal. That's Mufassirun mentioned, and we mentioned about in Ramadan, halal and tayyiba, that one explanation of tayyib is where it doesn't have any incorrect process in it. So it's still halal, it's perhaps not so 100% tayyib.
and he's struggling or something. Because it happened when you're cutting many times, his knife is not going through. So the animal was lying, the SPCA was there, so they just,
So,
yeah, because
They
they
can
cannot
find
cut.
there was a position of the blade of the animal's neck. It's full, tight enough. Don't really need much.
I absolutely.
Yeah.
What's you're talking about? What a cow? It's very easy. It's much easier than a sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just almost one side.
Right.
See?
That might be sharp.
Very, very important.
Yes.
Very
In
important.
the standing position, sometimes they cut it on the putting on a neck on the side, the standing position. I don't know. That is some of the time cutting them. They can't sit
In front,
down. Yeah.
I personally slaughtered like that. I was young. I was 15, 16, something like that.
Camel cutting.
I slaughtered from the front. It was quite easy. There was like no, because it's difficult to put force frontwards. From the back it's easier, but front it was easy because it was pulled quite tight.
Yeah.
They didn't even.
The rope.
So that was a moderate. There's one narration that right?
On the floor, keeping breaking loose. So I was interested on last year. This is this was
So I read a narration on the Hajj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the animals actually came forward to be slaughtered. It was Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But yeah, so we need to to get some professional guidance, and it's important. So even to get a proper knife, to do things that the hadith comments with, وَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ, that when you slaughter, slaughter it well. Meaning get the right animal, follow the right processes, and do that slaughter in the best possible way. And that is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I think this covered a lot of the aspects. Inshallah, Allah Ta'ala grant us all the understanding. Allah Ta'ala grant us an accepted Qurbani, and it will be a means of us coming closer to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And inshallah, there's nothing else, any other aspects.
So one question I had, we have to like clip our nails and cut our hair. So when is the last day they have to?
So it is a mustahab for us from the beginning of Dhul Hijjah. So we search for the moon on Friday night. So before, I think most probably we'll be seeing the moon is about 26 odd hours. So by Friday night you try to hear yourself clip and clean the things. It is mustahab for us to not to cut until we slaughter our animal. So yeah, we understand everything in perspective. We don't look down upon anybody who's not doing it, because it's a mustahab. It's not a fard, not wajib. It's mustahab, but if we can try to do it, we try to do it as well, inshallah.
Also in the hair as well, on the head.
All, yeah, even, yeah, all forms of cleaning and hair, yeah.
Halfway there already.
Halfway. Yeah, so it's an emulation of the Hujjaj who won't be using itar and things during while they're in the state of ihram. طيب سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
Allah